ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of What's Happening. I'm George Binns, and I'm here with my co-host, Gail Burke. And we're continuing our series of discussions with the candidates. And tonight we have with us Matt St. Hilaire. Thanks for joining us, Matt.
Thank you, George, and thank you, Gail.
Welcome to the show.
So you've been
Excited to be
through
here.
this twice already, and you're going for your third term. What are the unfinished business you'd like to work on this time around?
Yeah, so thanks for the question. I am running for a third term to re-election. I think over the first 4 years, I've really enjoyed my time on the council, working with the mayor and my colleagues. I think we've gotten a lot of good things done, but there's still a lot to do. I think, when you think about our schools, I think we can still do a better job looking at the class size issue. The full day kindergarten fee is still $4,000. I'd like to see that get down. Look at our waterfront. We still have an unfinished business there with McDonald's building. I'd like to see that get completed. And I think we have a lot of change happening in our city right now with development. And I think we need experienced leadership on the city council to continue to make sure our city continues to move in the right direction in a balanced way.
Well, this balance comment keeps coming up. And where do you see the balance, especially on Rantoul Street, between new businesses, restaurants, small retail, and the apartments and more housing?
Yeah, so this is by far for me the biggest issue facing our city right now is what the impact on development is going to be for Beverly. And when you think about all the development that's happening, the residential development, it's by far the biggest issue I'm hearing about from residents, concerns about how that might affect our schools and class sizes, how it might affect traffic and parking issues, how it might affect police, fire services, and other city services. And so it's good that our economy is thriving locally. It's good that we're an attractive place for people to want to come and build. And it's great that our restaurants and theaters are booming. But I think we need to think about as a city, how are we going to plan for this and what is appropriate? My background, I was opposed to or I should say, I supported the neighborhood, the North Beverly and Montserrat neighborhoods, and trying to limit the Whole Foods project. I think, for me, I had a lot of concern about the impact of traffic that's going to have in our neighborhoods there, and I wanted to try to limit the impact. Folly Hill, there's a proposal for potentially 700 to 800 units going up on Folly Hill. I think that'd be bad for Beverly. I think that's too big of a development in that location. And I think that would just be a negative impact potentially on our neighborhoods in Ryleside and in Raymond Farms. So for me, it's looking specifically at each project as they come and trying to see, what we can do to limit negative impacts for residents and keep quality of life strong for people that live here and pay taxes here.
What do you think the quality of life, how would you describe the quality of life in Beverly as opposed to, say, Salem or Peabody or...
I think it's great, and I've lived here my whole life, and my wife has as well, and we've chosen to raise our 3 kids here, and I think it's a great place to live and raise a family, and it's not just me that says that. I put out a citizen survey. I've done that 3 times over the last 4 years, and every time I get a lot of responses, and overwhelmingly people agree that it's a great place to live and raise a family. And there was just recently an online research organization, livability.com, that analyzed 2,000 cities across the United States that have between 20,000 and 350,000 people, and they ranked 40 different data points, and they said Beverly was one of the top 100 places to live in the U.S. And I agree with that, and I think that's for me the key is how do we keep what we've got.
I've asked the other candidates this as well. I had read in the paper about the school department for the second year in a row asking for more money. And it seems to me that there were very few questions asked by the city council as to what the money was for. And the school committee didn't seem to point out what it was for.
Well,
So,
I would slightly correct you on that. The school committee didn't ask for more money. I think what happened is the school committee presented their budget for the last 2 years, and we had a public hearing to talk about our budget, the city budget, and as part of that, we talked about the school budget. And for the last 2 years, we've had overwhelming concern from parents about class sizes and about the $4,000 kindergarten fee. And really, for us, from a city council point of view, what are our priorities as a city government and a city budget? And for us, education consistently has been something we care about, and as a result, we've tried to get more resources for the schools to increase, their ability to lower class sizes and address the $4,000.
What is the
kindergarten
average
fee.
class size?
So the school committee has policies in place that the
they
maximum
won't
is
go over
25 to
25, right.
and 30 for grades. I think it's 3 through 5. There are several classes that sort of bubble up each year to the 25, 26 number. And I think for a first, second, third grader, those are big numbers. And when you look at the statewide averages, Beverly is above the averages in class sizes. If you look at our surrounding communities, Beverly is again above our surrounding communities in those areas. And I think we need to be mindful as city councilors of our residents and comparing it to the rest of our communities and saying we want to be a leader in this. This is important to us. This is something that as a city, this is our responsibility.
But the rationale is if you have small classes, you're going to have better education. And that just statistically has not been proven. I know it sounds like it would
I think
be,
there's a lot of
but-
statistics on both sides of it. I think that, for me, it's common sense. If you have a lot of kids and you have a lot of distractions, you have a harder time teaching. And I have 3 kids in the schools, and I see that myself. I see that with my own kids. And when they have one-on-one attention, they thrive. And
Well,
when
of
they're-
course, but
So-
who can afford one-on-one attention
Right,
from
and
all
I'm
these
not
kids?
saying one-on-one, but I'm saying less is better than more. And I think, there is some evidence of that in the data. I know there's data on both sides of this issue. But for me, I think, there is overwhelming concern about this, and I think it is our responsibility to address it.
The other issue I have is the full-day kindergarten. To my mind, full-day kindergarten, it's a lot for a child of 5 to spend the whole day in school. I know it's a popular issue, but as far as kindergarten goes, half-day is free. It's only the full day, and I'm afraid that, not just in Beverly, but in other areas, that it's being used as a daycare rather than a kindergarten. And I would be opposed to having it become free because I think that puts a burden on the taxpayers. And most of the taxpayers don't have children in kindergarten.
So again, I'd slightly disagree with your presumption that full-day kindergarten isn't a good thing for young kids. I think there is evidence that early education is important as a foundation for young kids to grow.
I agree with you on that, but not at
the
that
movement
age,
across the state, and Massachusetts is a leader in education across the country and in the world. And the leader across in the trend across our state is for free full-day kindergarten. 80% of the school districts in Massachusetts offer free full-day kindergarten. If you look at our surrounding towns, again, free. And the number of communities that charge as much as we do is very small. It's 1 or 2 handfuls
So how
that
do you
charge
make that money up?
$4,000. And when you have a young family who have 1, 2, 3 kids, $4,000 to send your kid to full day kindergarten is a lot of money. And for some, they're choosing not to send their school, not because of the educational concerns, but because they can't afford it. And to me, we need to.
Well, they still have the half day.
Right.
That's free.
Right, but I think there is some educational, if you think there's an educational value to send your kid to full-day kindergarten and you think that you want to get them to a strong foundation and you can't afford it, you're having to make a decision to pass on that opportunity because you can't afford it. And I think in other communities, they're not having to make that decision. And I think it's time for us to look at this. I've been an advocate for reducing it, and I think we need to get to a plan to eliminate it over time. I think the big issue is it's about $600,000 in revenue. It's a big chunk to have to come up with in a year. But let's commit to reducing it $500 a year over 8 years, something like that. We have the money in the budget to do it. It's just a matter of making it a priority.
Well, that gets to be the other question of what are the priorities for the budget? We perpetually hear that we got to build a new police station,
Yeah.
we got to build a new safety center. We've got city offices scattered around town still.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, there is a move afoot to sell the Briscoe once it's emptied of students. part of the issue is, shouldn't that be converted into city offices? There's parking around it, and there's some advantages to it. So where do you draw the line between, do we rehab some of our existing facilities as opposed to sell it off to Windover and build something new someplace else? And I know that piece of property that Cummings has donated to the city for a fire station or police station is sort of burning a hole in the pocket of the administration.
Yeah.
They would really like to use that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think as far as your first question about the priorities of the budget, for me, it's number one is education. Our responsibility as a city is to educate our kids. We need to be providing the funds that are necessary for our schools to be excellent. Two, public safety, as you referenced. These men and women are protecting us literally every day, keeping us safe, our community safe. They need the funding that they need to do their jobs to keep us safe. And the police station is long overdue. The situation they're in is deplorable. They need to be in a new facility. And then third, for me, it's maintaining our assets, our roads, our sidewalks, our sewer and water lines. These are our municipal assets, and we need to be maintaining them. And we've made a commitment to do that over the last 4 years that I've been on the council. And we're doing a lot of work, and it's great. It's transforming our streetscapes in a positive way, and that's good for the economy. That's good for quality of life for residents. In terms of the Briscoe question, that's going to come before the council in probably the next few years, and I think we need to take a real strong look at that. I think there was a committee that recommended a sale of Briscoe and to reuse it as some sort of, who knows what, but I think the guess is it will be more housing of some sort, right?
Every school that we've abandoned has turned into some sort of condos.
But again, that's a
apartments.
municipal asset. If we sell it, that's a one-time sale of say $1 million. That's the number that's been floated about.
Yeah.
Is that the best use of that land and that municipal asset? I'm not convinced of that. I think police station, we could use the Cummings Center. But we could also, I think we need to take a harder look at whether it makes sense to do something at the Briscoe site for City Hall, for municipal offices. Do we split the parcel up in some way? Is there another use? I've heard senior housing potentially in that location, which could be an option. I think we need to do a much deeper dive. I respect that the committee, did a thorough look at this as well. But we only get one shot at this, and once it's sold, it's gone for good, and I want to make sure it's the right decision.
When do you think that you might come to some sort of a decision on it? It
Well,
seems like you've been
really, it's
batting
up to
it
the
around for
mayor
a while.
if the mayor determines that he'd like to see something new there. It would be, I think, it would come to us as an order to basically a reuse of Briscoe, and once. I don't think.
Yeah, you need a city council.
Probably, we got a new middle school opening in 18, fall of 18, which is very exciting. So after that, we really don't need, there won't be anything going on at Briscoe. So I think at that point, we'll probably see something from the administration.
Yeah.
Let's talk about sanctuary cities. As you know, in Salem, there's something on the ballot to vote whether or not to make Salem a sanctuary city.
Sure.
Beverly has sanctuary schools. How would you vote if the question came up before the city council whether or not to become a sanctuary city?
Yeah, I've been following this issue closely. We had a pretty robust debate with the school committee did earlier this year, and I respect that they made the decision that they thought was in the best interest of our schools. This is a broader discussion that's been happening across the state, across the country. And, I think I completely understand with all the divisiveness that's happening down in D.C. and the lack of an ability of the federal government to come to a consensus on immigration reform. I get the frustration that people have and they want to act locally. I don't think it's necessary to do something at the city level to make Beverly a sanctuary city. I would be opposed to that, and the reason why is I think it's a very divisive issue. If you look at what's happened in Salem, it's consuming the political discussion in Salem. They're not talking about their schools, they're not talking about capital projects, they're not talking about budget, they're talking about a sanctuary city. And one of the things that I've seen about that is a lot of policy doesn't change. Beverly does not our police don't ask about someone's immigration status when they pull somebody over. Our schools don't ask that either. The other piece of this is one of the consistent themes I've seen in sanctuary cities. First of all, there's no definition of what a sanctuary city is. It means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, in a lot of different communities. Well, a lot of different communities. It can be. But one of the consistent themes I've seen is it prohibits local police from working with the federal government in any way. And
Exactly.
I think we live in very dangerous times. You saw last night with the lockdown, at the Beverly High School and the hospital. If our local police, need to work with the federal government to keep dangerous criminals out of Beverly,
They need to be able to.
they need to be able
yeah.
to do that. And I don't think it makes sense for us to pass a local ordinance that would prohibit them from doing that. So I would be opposed to a sanctuary city.
Okay.
Well, back to the issue of the assets. I've looked at the budget kind of casually over a couple of years, and there's a line item, we're going to spend money on this, that, and 3 other things. I don't see a listing of the assets of the city, and what are we really worth? What do we really have? And where this comes to mind is, there's a blog for Prospect Hill neighborhood that has gotten into the issue several times of why don't we have 2 water meters? One that you can have to use for watering only, and it would come at a lower rate because it doesn't go into the sewers, therefore it doesn't get processed through that. And part of that discussion comes down to the line of, well, the sewer fee, or the sewer enterprise fund, I guess is what it technically is very flush, and it's making money. And lo and behold, we find out that the administration is making a judgment that, well, we're using the trucks that we're buying with the sewer fee to fix the sewers. And we've got all sorts of vehicles. I'm getting to be surprised at the number of vehicles going around, all white with the Beverly logo on the door. Is there any chance that we can get to the point of saying, this is what we own, this is all the equipment we're spending our money on, and this is where the money's coming from?
Yeah. So I haven't seen a detailed list of our assets like that. I think that's something we should ask for, and that's something I'm sure Brian Ailes, our city finance director, would be happy to provide for us. To your point about the second water meters, I introduced an order along with my colleagues, Council President Gawansi and Jason Silva, to look at the second water meter issue. And for me, it's a matter of fairness. If you're watering your lawn or filling up your pool or watering your garden, you shouldn't be paying a sewer fee for that. That's not what you're not using the sewer fee for that. And so it's a matter of fairness. And I completely get the frustration people have when they look at their water bill and they say, why is it 1,000? I've seen people that have $1,000 water bills in certain months because of that. And so it's a compelling fairness issue for me. And
what seems to be the drag on it? Why doesn't
again,
it
it's
pass?
so what we've looked at. We've had a number of discussions at the local at our subcommittee meeting on finance and property, which I'm not a member of, but they've been talking about this quite a bit. And again, it comes down to fixed costs. Our sewer and water infrastructure and operations costs a certain amount to run, regardless of whether you're using, X amount of water or Y amount of water.
Yeah, we get a fee from Salem for
Right.
using
So
the sewer facilities,
so that costs an X amount. If you now are diverting a certain number of gallons, whatever the threshold is, you're losing revenue basically coming in. Right. So it's a revenue situation. And how do you offset that? Well, you're going to have to raise the sewer rate or the water rate. So. Do we want to raise water rates across the board for everybody?
We'll get back to the issue that
Right.
if it's really excess charges in the sewer rate, enough to buy equipment for something else,
Right.
do we really need to raise the rate?
Yeah, and we've been looking at the
these are the kinds
sewer
of things that I
enterprise
think
fund
is-
pretty deeply. We had $1 million in southeast Essex sewer district funds. We just recently, a year or two ago, brought back $500,000 from them, and this is something that has generated a lot of interest on the council, and for me in particular as well. where is our money being spent? Why are we asking for more money when we've got $1 million sitting over there? You know, I've been tried to be a strong voice for taxpayers, and when I see things like that, you know, we ask detailed questions, and that has resulted in us bringing some money back. So I think that was a positive thing.
We've had several discussions on the vocational school and the fact that we have 300 students in Beverly that will not be able to go to the vocational school. They're put on a waiting list. And I know that we pay a certain amount of money to have the kids go to the vocational school. What can we do about having these 300 students who would like to go, but there's
It's a great
no room
question.
for them?
I wasn't aware that there was that lengthy of a waiting list here in Beverly, and
Yeah.
that is unfortunate. I really don't know the answer to that. I think that is something the school committee needs, should look at, and I'd be happy to address it with them. But
Yeah,
I think that is a school
the
committee
council
issue.
should look
Yeah.
into it because, the vocational education is very important to a lot of kids, a lot
Yeah,
of
and that's
parents.
something I know at the state level, working for the governor, that is being discussed is education in general, and we should be promoting vocational
Absolutely.
education because
Yeah.
those are great jobs that need to be done, and we're lacking in a lot of those skills right now
You're right.
in certain trades.
Well, the thing that came to my mind was there's an article in the paper 2 weeks ago now of Peabody is starting their own programming, coding, IT kind of classroom where they would emphasize a vocational aspect for those skills. And they are working with the North Shore Regional Tech or Essex Aggie, whatever you know it as, to
Coordinate.
make sure they're not stepping on each other's toes, because as you know, from the federal and from the state level, there are certain charters that
Sure.
regional tech schools do certain things, high schools do something else,
Yep.
and never the twain shall meet, kind of thing. But we're getting into a situation where there is more demand for that kind of educational or training background. So again, like you say, this is an issue for the school committee, but shouldn't the city council have some voice into, hey guys, this is what you ought to be looking at, and we recognize.
Yeah, I mean, I see my role as a city councilor. We have, per the charter, certain duties that we're responsible for.
Yeah.
But I also see it as, we're leaders in the community, and we should be speaking out on issues that are important. And the issue you're referring to, I'm not familiar with. That is a school committee issue. I am the city council's one of the two liaisons to the school committee's finance and facilities subcommittee, and so I do attend those meetings on a regular basis, and I do have good relationships with the school committee members, and would be happy to discuss those.
Or does anybody on the council have any communication at all with the representative to the vocational school? I have found that almost no one does. And I recall...
Yeah, I have interacted with the gentleman
You have?
on a couple of
You were able
occasions.
to get him?
Yeah, we had I had a couple constituent issues related
Okay.
to the school that he was very responsive on. I haven't had a great deal of interaction with him, and I, at the moment, can't recall his name even. But
Well, I recall a few years ago trying to get in touch with him
yeah,
and leaving
I was
message
able to
after
find
message.
his name on the website, and
He never returned my calls.
Totally anonymous, okay.
Yeah, and he's appointed, so
well, for the
it's not
record,
like
he
he's
was
elected.
responsive to me, and we were
Okay.
able to
Yeah.
make some progress on a couple issues.
Okay. We've talked a little bit about the city charter because some people seem to think that it may be time to look again at the city charter to try and get some changes to it. How would you feel about that?
Yeah, I think reviewing the city charter is a healthy thing to do. I wasn't involved in the last time that the charter discussion happened, and I would definitely be interested in a conversation about that. I don't have particular strong feelings that we need to blow it up, but certainly I think it's healthy for us to review and
Yeah,
reconsider.
I think so.
And I'd
What was
be
it,
Well,
10
be-
years ago that
Yeah,
they did the
something like
last
that.
one?
Well, I think the issue comes up as we've been discussing this evening. There's some things that we would like to see done with the school department. Well, technically, all you guys can do is review their budget and say yay or nay. We
That's right.
accept the whole thing or we reject it.
And that's with the city budget as well.
Yeah. So I think there needs to be a little more involvement from the representative side of city government as opposed to the executive side. I think you guys should have more
I don't
input.
necessarily disagree with that. I guess the one thing I would say is I do think it is incumbent upon us as city councilors to exercise the leverage that we do have, and I've tried to be creative in my four years on trying to influence outcomes, and we can vote against things. We can we do have the ability to communicate broadly across our community to influence decisions. We can take votes on resolutions, and there's a lot of things we can do to apply pressure where need be if we want to. We don't just have to vote yay or nay and move on. I think it is incumbent upon us to take that leadership role and exert some of the leverage that we do have.
I think that doesn't really show up very well in the press. So I think there needs to be some other mechanism to.
Well, we just talked about the schools, so we approve their budget and we review and approve their budget. My thought on that was if I feel like there should be more money spent on our schools, what I did is offered amendments to reduce spending on the city side and said let's use that money and let's use it on our schools. So we can do that. I mean that's something that I can do. We can't direct them to do it, but we can make it clear that that's a position that we feel should be done.
Well, our time is almost up, Matt.
Wow.
Believe it or not, I know. So would you like to make a closing statement?
Yeah, I'd just like to say, again, running for re-election to a third term. I've really enjoyed being on the council for the last 4 years and looking forward to an opportunity to continue to serve. I have a lot of experience, I think, that I've gained over my career. Grew up in Beverly. I've worked for Governor Charlie Baker at the State House for the last 3 years. So in addition to serving locally, I have experience at the state level. And I think it's important that we have leaders who have that experience as we're heading into a lot of change happening in our city over the next few years. We need to make sure that we continue to head in the right direction. So I'd appreciate residents considering me for one of their 3 votes for city council at large.
Well, thank you very much for coming on to the show. We wish you luck.
Thank you.
And we want to thank our audience for watching. And we will continue to interview several more candidates before the election. And we hope you'll stay tuned because we feel it's important to have the audience become more aware of what the people running and the people that are already in office are doing. So thank you again for watching, and we'll see you next time.